What's up guys, DuArktik here with another Marvel Strike Force video, and in this video we are going to talk about minions again. Yes, again. Okay, so we're going to talk about all the minions. We are going to take a look at all the infographics that I made for each team. We're going to take a look at the 5 main teams that you should consider gearing up a little bit and see how it goes for the upcoming Death Scourge for Archangel, the last horseman of the apocalypse. So we're gonna take a look at their ISO weight, their T4s, the position of the characters, how these teams are supposed to work, having into consideration which enemies we are facing and why some teams will be better than others. So this is like the final video probably that you'll make about minions, and why I think it's going to be better to invest in some teams instead of others. So we're going to talk about all of that. And before we start, I have to apologize. I have to make big apology. I thought that we were going to do the Death Scourge on Tuesday, but it's not the case. I was misled. It's not my fault. I was misled. So when you take a look at the calendar that was shared by Scopely doesn't make these calendars, but it's shared by them. They have a picture of Archangel on the 13th, like, why you do that? So yeah, I thought the Archangel Scourge event would start on the 13th. It's not the case, it's on Friday, on the 16th, and you can see right here, it doesn't say anything about the Death Scourge. This is one of the biggest events that I have this year, and there is no mention of it on the calendar, there is no note or anything like that. But once again, it wasn't Scopely who made this, and I didn't pay enough attention, that's it. It's my fault. Okay, so let's talk about the minions. We are going through T4s, ISO weight, mechanics of the team, why some teams are going to be better than others. And this is going to be especially important because of the scourges that you can use. Some teams will be able to use more scourges than others, so depending if you are a new player, if you are a mid-range player to veteran player, but you are not like absolutely tryhard, and then if you are the ultimate tryhard player, then depending on that case, you might decide for one team or the other. But like I said, I'm going to explain this throughout the video. Just keep in mind that some teams will allow you to use more scourge than others, and other teams will benefit and make your life easier with other scourges. So that's all I have to mention. And as always, if you like these videos, make sure you share them with your friends. If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and make sure you smash that like button. Okay, so let's get started. Obviously, we are not going to talk about the end team. I don't think at this point in time it makes sense to talk about the end team, maybe in the second runs of the Death Scourge. And we are also not going to talk about the mercenaries because there are only 4 of them, and being honest about it, the mercenaries don't have any relevance apart from Merc LT, which you can plug and play on any of the teams we are going to take a look at. Okay, so let's get started. Let's talk about the first team, and it's going to be the Ravagers. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Ravagers because they only have 3 characters. And as I just mentioned, you can pair them up with other characters, with shield, with mercenaries, with aim. You can pair them up and complete them with other teams, and or even with hand. But I don't think it's going to be a good investment because this is a very specific Alliance Wars offensive team, and that's it. Beyond that, that's it. Some of these characters are cheap, and based on that, some people took them for Dark Dimension 5, which was something that I never recommended. But this team has another problem, which is going to be Ravager's Teacher, because every time you use his special, you are going to apply immunity for your entire team, and this is going to be awful because on this scourge, there is a specific scourge that if you have negative effects applied to your team, those negative effects, they are going to be flipped into positive effects. So if you have any character applying immunities to your entire team, that's going to compromise you being able to flip those positive effects. So that's why I don't really like the Ravagers for this specific context. Now, being fair with this team, Ravager Bruiser is a very, very good character, and he does a lot of good things. Heals up, he gives defense up, he applies disrupt to the enemies. Then we have Stitcher, turn rewinds on the enemies. Turn rewind is going to be something important for this Scourge, and he also has the chance of assisting. Unfortunately, it's not a good case. Ravager, Stitcher, he can also disintegrate a character, so that means the character cannot revive, and this is going to be especially good when you are facing specific minions like Hand Sentry, which is going to apply evade and stealth to all the enemies, and is going to revive because it's also one of the Scourges. So depending if you are using that Scourge where minions revive, or if you don't use that Scourge, the value of Ravager Stitcher might increase or decrease. Okay, so that's it. Now, they are a little bit required in having some good T4s, but that's mostly for Alliance Wars offense. So are you going to invest on this team, and then you are not going to do the T4s for Alliance Wars offense? It's a little bit messed up because, yeah, the team, they just got a rework. It's very, very unlikely that they'll get new characters, because also it's the lore is very short. There is maybe 1 or 2 other characters that you can mention about it, and they would be minions anyway. So in terms of lore, in terms of longevity, this team is pretty much dead already. So if you didn't invest them in the past, there is no point investing them right now, in my opinion. If you already invested them in the past, this might be a very strong team for you because you probably overgear them. If you took Ravager Stitcher to gear T16, which I find unnecessary, but if you did, then maybe you only need to use these 3 characters and you will be good to go. Because, yeah, if you are overgeared, of course, if you are punching down on the content, that's going to be something good for you. So that's why I don't like this team. In terms of the T4s, like I mentioned, there are a lot of T4s here that are related with Alliance Wars, and if you're going to do them for Scourge, then you are not going to use them in other game modes. I don't know, it's something that is hard to decide. I like to use Skirmisher on Boomer because he has a chance of assist, so you are applying more vulnerabilities to the enemies. Then the Ravager Bruiser, you can use him as a striker, you can use him as a healer, you can use him as a skirmisher. You have those possibilities because his basic attack is extremely powerful, applies disrupt, flips positive effects on the enemies, very strong overall. And Stitcher, I like him as a striker because once again his basic disintegrates the enemies, and that means they cannot be revived, so the stronger your basic is, the better. And the striker isolate attack also does that effect. Okay, so that's the Ravagers. They're not the worst team, they are just the team that I least recommend. Now let's move on to the next team, which is going to be the Kree team. And the Kree team, there are a few reasons why you should invest on this team, especially if you are a new player. I think the Kree team is going to be the best team for new players because this team will allow you to unlock Nick Fury, and then Nick Fury will allow you to get Omega Red. Now you don't need Omega Red at 700 stars, you don't need Nick Fury at 700 stars, so that goes for the minions as well. If you get these minions at 5 yellow, as a new player, that's going to be most enough for at least 1 year or so. So it's not something that you need to rush to gear up these characters and so on. As soon as you get them to 5 yellow, that's good to go. Now in terms of this team, it works around gaining a lot of energy. It's not the fastest team, they gain a lot of energy that will allow you to use their abilities multiple times. They have some big burst damage with Kree Reaper, with Kree Cyborg, and also with Kree Noble. And if you can kill the important targets as soon as possible, that's going to be amazing. But like I said, it's not the fastest team, and once again it revolves around obtaining energy, but the energy allows you to use the abilities more often. It's not that great. That's why I recommend this team only for new players that still didn't unlock Nick Fury, because after that you don't get much value of these Kree minions. In terms of isolate, I like the skirmisher or healer, depending on your red stars, depending on how much gear you have. For Kree Royal Guard, yes, Kree Royal Guard, because when he does the taunt, he heals himself, and if you have healer isolate, that's going to increase the healing that he's able to provide for himself. The Skirmisher Isolate is also a decent option because he also gives counter to himself. That will allow you to apply vulnerability to the enemies, that will allow you to remove positive effects from the enemies, and that is going to be very important on Scourges. Now, in terms of Kree Noble, I like her as a Skirmisher because she always calls the other characters to assist, and that's going to increase her damage. You can use her as a striker as well. I don't like her as a striker. The most important thing about the Skirmisher is that whenever you use her basic, that will allow you to remove positive effects from the enemies, and if you remove those positive effects from the enemies, you are going to get like 1 or 2 energy, or 1 energy for 2 characters. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, removing those positive effects with the basic is important. That's why the Skirmisher, it's nice for her. Moving on, we have the Kree. This is the Oracle, Kree Oracle. The healer is a way to, because he's a healer. He gives energy also with the basic, but you don't need like any specific criteria for that. It's just do the basic and you'll get energy. So increasing the amount of healing that he provides might be a decent option, because that's pretty much all he does. Then we have Kree Cyborg. And the Kree Cyborg, I think, is the best character for you to have with the Striker Isolate, just to make sure that you double tap the enemies. You can do that with his special. That will do triple tap, because he already does 2 attacks with the special. And with the basic, he also has the chance of giving energy if you finish off the enemies. So it's going to be somewhat okay as a striker. Then you have Kree Reaper. I like her as a raider because whenever she crits, even with assists, she's going to get energy, and she's going to have energy for the team and also heal herself. So this is going to be some off healing and also additional energy for the team. Now, as you can see, this team can run pretty much very well without any T4s. This is a rating from 1 to 5, from not recommended at all at 1, and very good or must have at 4 yellow stars or 5 yellow stars. So this is a simple system of 1 to 5 rating. And when you do the T4 on the passive of Kree Royal Guard, he's going to get more armor, which is nice because he's the tank, and he's also going to increase the chance that whenever he's attacked, he's going to give energy for the team. So it's a nice to have T4. Then with Kree Noble, we also have a nice to have, but to a lesser degree on the basic, just because it will allow you to get energy with the basic. And that's pretty much it. In terms of uniques, you don't have important uniques over here, so you can pretty much use them as a new player. It's not going to be a problem, and none of these minion teams are going to require like gold promotion credits and even silver promotion credits, like unless you are doing like difficulty 6 or 7 or even higher than that, then there is no reason for you to spend your silver promotion credits for this team. In terms of the position, I like to have a Noble next to Reaper, Oracle in the middle, Cyborg in the center, or next to Kree Royal Guard. Is a little bit more beefy, he has a little bit more armor, and then we have the Kree Royal Guard in the corner because he gets counters and he taunts. If you would not get counters, you should not put the tank in the middle. This is a rule that you have for a few teams, not all of them, only if they do counters. Okay, so that's the Kree team. Once again, the Kree team is the best team for new players. If you are very early in the game, this is going to be the best team for you to use. So after, you can use these characters to unlock Nick Fury. Moving on, we are going to talk about Hydra. And Hydra is not a team that I like, because they are so dependent on Red Skull, but they have the stats, and altogether they are pretty decent, and they have some viability depending if you have them with Red Skull or with Zemo. Now we also have Winter Soldier, and that gives these characters additional value, especially for Hydra Sniper and also Hydra Grenadier. Those are probably the 2 more versatile minions that you can use on hybrid teams, on PvP situations, on Avengers Tower, on Alliance Wars, Cosmic Crucible. You can get some value out of these 2 minions, once again Grenadier and Hydra Sniper. Okay, so now in terms of the T4s for this team, this is probably the worst team in terms of the T4s, because they have a lot of nice to have T4s. You have all the passives, because all of them will get more stats, more armor, more health, more damage, more speed, more everything. So this is the worst team in terms of T4 requirements, because as you can see, they require, or they have nice to have T4s in many of their abilities. And yeah, so for the Hydra Armored Guard, passive in terms of the T4s, for a Grenadier, the passive as well for additional focus. With the Trooper, the passive deals more damage, and he also has some retaliation effect together with Red Skull. Then for Scientist, passive once again, and for Sniper, the basic, the special, and the passive. This one is going to give him more turn meter, and because he's a striker, and because he also does full piercing damage on the basic, if you do the basic, of course, this is going to destroy your enemies without that piercing damage. Now, in terms of isolate for this team, we have a healer for the Armored Guard. This is because he's not the fastest character, and whenever you do the special, is going to heal himself by quite a lot, especially if you have negative effects. This ability will scale very well with healer isolate, and he doesn't have any counters. He doesn't have you could also use him as a fortifier. That's the second best option, is the fortifier, but anything beyond healer and fortifier, there is no reason. And the reason why I also don't like him as a fortifier is because his taunt only lasts for one turn. If you have tanks that have multiple turns of taunt, and they don't have a source of defense up like Strife, then that's a good reason to give them Fortifier Isolate. If that's not the case, then it's not necessary to use the Fortifier Isolate. So I prefer the healer because it scales better with the special ability that already heals himself, and it will scale with the healer Isolate. Now, in terms of the Grenadier, I like him as a skirmisher because he applies slow to the enemies, and yes, one slow can change the course of a match, is very important. So making sure that he has higher focus is going to be important. We are also going to apply vulnerabilities to the enemies. You could also make him a raider. That would be the second best option, because both of his attacks attack multiple characters. Now, in terms of the Trooper, you could use Trooper as a raider, as a striker, as a skirmisher, because he also assists on non-attacking abilities, and we have a few here with the Scientist and with the Armored Guard. But overall, I guess the raider is going to be the best option, because whenever you use the special, you are going to apply vulnerability to multiple characters. The cooldown is not like the biggest ever, so I think that's going to be one of the options. You need more vulnerabilities. That's the reality. This team does not have enough characters applying vulnerabilities. So, or you use Trooper as a raider, or use Trooper as a skirmisher. It's going to be up to you, because you really need to have a few more vulnerabilities than the ones you consume. Okay, so now we have Scientist. The Scientist, he does healing with his special ability, and that's pretty much it. He also does a nice amount of damage with the basic. He also applies heal block, but he doesn't need the focus, and the damage is... it's okay, but the cooldown on this ability is so low, and you don't have any other source of healing for the rest of the team, that it might be something to consider. So if you have like big red stars on your tank, and if you also have him with healer isolate, maybe you can go with striker on this one, just to balance out. But I think this is the best way to go about it. And finally we have Hydra Sniper, which is definitely a striker. There is some crazy content creator out there. Can I even show you this? I'm gonna make a break just to show you this. Okay, so we have this crazy lunatic, I don't know what to say. We have this lunatic content creator out there that constantly says, trust him. You just have to trust him for no reason. But this lunatic is using skirmisher isolate on Hydra Sniper, which he has full piercing damage. He has full piercing damage on his abilities. So why are you using skirmisher isolate on his character? It doesn't make any sense. It's 100% lunacy, but yeah, trust him. Trust him, because he uses the skirmisher isolate on the character that actually does piercing damage and is full-blown striker. But there you go. So 100% lunatic. So Either sniper, 100% striker, because he's gonna do massive amount of damage, and especially if you have this guy with a lot of red stars. I have him at 6 red stars, and as a striker he does so much damage. He literally nukes one character out of existence because of the piercing damage that he does with his basic attack and also with the isolate attack. Now that's it for the either team. In terms of the uniques are actually pretty good, so if you are considering taking this team to orange gear, because once again you can make hybrid teams out of these characters with Red Skull, with Zemo, and some of those combinations, they have viability right now in Alliance Wars and also in Cosmic Crucible. So based on that, the uniques, they are not mostly relevant in terms of game progress, so you can gear up these characters to gear tier 14, 15 without compromising your stock of uniques. In terms of the gear, I mentioned this before, like if you have them at 4 stars, 5 stars, that's going to be fine. But yeah, this is a team that is more recommended for mid-range to advanced players because of their late game viability. In terms of the position, it doesn't really matter, but if you have this guy taunting and he doesn't have counters, so you can stop chain attacks from the enemies with a sniper because he's a stealth character. This is also a reason why you should have more than one healer, with one character with healer isolate, just to make sure that he doesn't die, because this is going to be one of your main sources of damage. Then you have the scientist in the middle, then you have the trooper, and then you have the grenadier. How you can tell the difference between the trooper and the scientist? It's because the scientist, he has headphones and the other one does not. Okay, so that's all information for the either team. Let's move on for the next team, which is gonna be my favorite team, the AIM team. Okay, so the AIM team, as I mentioned before, as I mentioned in other videos, I like this team because they work with negative effects. I have shown you gameplay of this team in action, and right now I have them at level 75 gear tier 14, and they are so much better. They also have isolate blue, and yes, I'm gonna try to get top 2500 to make sure I get 6 yellow star Archangel. So I'm gonna invest as much as possible to make sure that this team is viable. So maybe I'll take them to level 80, depends on how difficult those minion nodes will be. So this team works because every time negative effects are applied to your team, you are going to get positive effects out of them. You are also going to get turn meter, which will allow your characters to go faster, and that will make this team so overpowered. Now they have a problem. They have a problem is that they rely on the enemies to attack you to increase their value, which is not something you usually want, and with this team you cannot use all the scourges that gives you additional points. There are a few scourges that you can use with them, but there is one team that is better than this one for that specific situation. So only if you are trying to get like top 500, and if you are really got like to difficulty 8, maybe difficulty 9, only on that specific situation you should invest on the other team. This will be the easiest team. This will be the team that I think it's better for most people, because you can even win with them on auto. They work so well with the negative effects, they work so well with the ways the scourges work, that you can even put on auto and you are going to win with them, based on information I have from the test server. Okay, so in terms of investment, and one of the reasons why I like this team, I didn't mention this about the Hydra team and the Kree team, but it's very likely that these teams will get a rework next year. So the Kree team, there are a lot of Kree characters that can be released. The Hydra team, there are also a lot of Hydra characters that can be released, and we are comparing this with the Ravagers. The Ravagers, very low chance that they will get rework. And the same goes for the AIM team. There are at least a few characters that were popular recently that could push this team to a rework. So that's another thing that could justify your investment. Once again, for this first Scourge of Archangel, we don't have any information about reworks. Maybe it will not be the case in the future, and that will push you to invest on one specific team. But talking about the AIM team, this team will benefit a lot, and you can see this is why this is a 5-star rating system. This is a must-have T4, because every time aim assault as a turn is going to give turn meter to characters adjacent to him. So that's going to be 2 characters, but if you have an enemy, and we already know that we have enemies that put all the characters together, if you have an enemy that puts everyone together, then you are going to give turn meter for your entire team, including himself. So this is going to be massive, this is going to be amazing, because also on his special he gives speed up to himself. So you can see this character with speed up, then giving turn meter for your entire team. That will make the aim team super fast, and that's going to be great, because the more they go, the better they are. In terms of other T4s, you could make the basic also T4. If you have him as a striker as a weight, it's going to be option. It's going to be striker or skirmisher in case you want to remove positive effects on the enemies. So one of those, if you are a striker, if you have big red stars, if you are trying to get like top 500, maybe doing the T4 on this basic is going to be an option. It's not something I recommend. Once again, 1 star, not recommended at all, and 2 stars, very low recommendations of doing this T4. But yeah, the T4 on the passive is definitely a must-have, because how much it influences the entire team. Then taking a look at the T4s for aiming factor, we have the special. Very important, because the special is going to give 75% turn meter to himself. He's also going to heal himself, and it also has other effect I don't remember. And on top of that, he's going to give 2 counters to himself and 2 counters to 2 adjacent allies. And it's actually going to be all allies if all allies are adjacent. So once again, if we have Magneto or Polaris on the enemy team, if all the characters are together, the aim team, they are going to get tons and tons of turn meter from aim assault and tons and tons of counters from aiming factor. Aiming factor on this Scourge is going to be extremely strong. Anytime negative effects are applied to aiming factor, and he applies negative effects to himself, which is very funny, he's going to flip all those negative effects into positive effects. So that's going to make him extremely powerful, on top of him giving counters to everyone else. So the special is a must-have T4 on this character, and the basic, it's okay. I think it does some additional effect. It's not like super amazing. I think instead of applying 2 negative effects to the enemies, you apply 3. It's just okay. Once again, unless you are going for top 500, it's something you can skip. Now, in terms of Monstrosity, Monstrosity is an optional character. You could use Monstrosity, or you could use Merc LT if you already gear up Merc LT in the past, or if you have more tech gear than bio gear. Merc LT is tech, Monstrosity is bio. So based on that, you have to make your decision. And once again, we have the same situation. We have enemies on the Death Scourge that will put everyone together, and Monstrosity with his special is going to apply offense up for everyone. And that's nice. What's not nice about this is that it's very likely that you already have offense up on your team. So the value of this is, we'll see. We don't know yet for sure, but we'll see the value. In terms of the other abilities, I don't really recommend the T4s. They're okay, but not like must-have. And the Isolate Striker is going to be a good option. And that's pretty much it. But once again, you can use a Merc LT in case you don't have enough bio gear to get up this character. Then we have Aim Researcher. In terms of the T4s, the passive is must-have. It's very important, because anytime a negative effect is applied to any aim character, anytime a negative effect is applied to any aim character, even if the Scourges apply negative effects to you, she is going to get 20% turn meter. So that means that if there is an AoE attack from the enemies, like Magneto putting everyone together, she's going to get a full turn just because of that. And she's incredibly fast in situations like Darker Mansion, Scourges, and so on, just because of that. Anytime a bleed, offense down, anything is applied to your team, she's just going and going and going. Then the other T4s, they are not important. She's going to be the main healer, and she does so much healing. You don't need any other healer, because the special ability of her heals for so much. It heals multiple characters, and the cooldown is fairly low, and especially because she goes so fast. So she's the only healer that you need, and the passive T4 is definitely a must-have. Now, in terms of aim security, she doesn't need any T4s. And in terms of the ISO weight, you are going to use the skirmisher ISO weight, and this is because you want to guarantee that you apply the slow to the enemies every time she does counter attacks or every time she does the basic attack. In terms of the taunt, is not really important, and while she has a decent amount, she gets resistance from her passive, but the taunt is very easily dispelled, so it's not going to be something important. Just focus on having her as a skirmisher and making sure that she has those counters all the time from aim effector. Okay, so that's the aim team. In terms of the mini uniques, or in terms of the centerpiece uniques, that's the way of saying it. The extremis, they are not important at all. Most characters that use extremis, they are not relevant at all. Then you have gamma radiation here, so this might be a problem if you geared up your gamma team recently, or if you are a new player and you don't have enough. And the infinite energy is also not relevant enough right now in terms of the meta, which characters use them. You have Dagger, you have Mr. Negative. Those characters are okay, but they are not meta right now. They were meta a few months ago, and therefore you can invest instantly on this team. This is going to be top 2000 to 2500, even top 5000. If you are pushing top 5000, if you are pushing for the 5 yellow star, 6 yellow star, or even 7 yellow star, this is one of the teams that you want to invest in, and I think based on everything it will be easily justified. In terms of the position, we have aim security, we have aim effector, aim assault, and aim researcher. And then we have aim monstrosity. Now aim monstrosity is in the corner because I'm not going to use him, I'm going to use Merc LT. If you have if you are going to use aim monstrosity, then you want to put aim researcher in the corner, and you want to put aim monstrosity in the middle next to aim assault, because you really need these counters from the aim effector to go to security and to go to assaulter. Monstrosity is nice, it does nice damage, but he could also use the counters, but I don't think we are in a good position where we can put him somewhere in the middle next to Infector, because the value is much higher on those other characters. Okay, so that's the aim team. That's the aim team. Now finally we have probably the best team, because this is the team that will allow you to use more scourges, allowing you to get more points. And specifically there is a scourge that if the enemies have taunt, and if they have fortified ISO weight, which they will always get taunt on spawn, if all of that situation, then you are going to get positive effects on the enemies, and you don't want that. You don't want that, of course, and that's why this team has slightly advantage over the aim team. It's because they will have a slightly advantage on that specific situation where the enemies have fortified ISO weight. Now the ISO weight for this team is going to be very important, and it's something that we need to talk about. Let's talk about the T4s first. So the only T4 that really matters, and it's probably must have, it's very nice to have, it's not must have, but it's very nice to have, is the passive ability from Shield Assault. This is going to be very important because it's going to increase your crit chance on all your shield minions, and some of these minions, when they crit, they can turn rewind the enemies. Now, based on this, and based on the scourges that we have, there is a scourge that is going to give you 30% crit chance, this is going to give you 50% crit chance, and the passive crit chance is 10%. That means your total of crit chance with this T4 is going to be 90%. So even if you don't do this T4, you still have 80% chance of crit, and that's still very nice. It's very unlikely that you'll fail the crits, but of course, if you want to play safe, do the T4. So based on this crit chance that we have from the scourges and from the team itself, you are going to be able to turn rewind those characters with fortified ISO weight, and making sure that they will never ever spread positive effects to the enemies. With the aim team, the difference is that instead you are going to use several characters with the skirmisher ISO weight, and depending on the size of your team, you could even use researcher with skirmisher ISO weight, just to make sure that you remove all those positive effects, because if they have no positive effects, they're not gonna share it. So this team just has a slightly advantage over the AIM team, but once again the mechanics of the AIM team are better for the Scourgers. This one, you just can take a little bit more advantage on that specific Scourge that unfortunately is worth a lot of points. Okay, so in terms of the T4s, we already talked about the Shield Medic. She benefits a little bit of the T4 on the passive, because even that we have one healer and one support character, the healing is not that great because the multipliers are low and their stats are just atrocious. While the AIM team, they have decent stats, the stats of the Shield team, they are just atrocious. So having some additional healing coming from the passive might help you a little bit. And then in terms of the T4 on this guy, on a Shield Trooper, it does a little bit more damage, and because of the retaliation attacks, he does retaliation attacks, not counters. This is something that is very important. Retaliation attacks do not apply vulnerability to the enemies, the counters do apply vulnerabilities to the enemies, and it's something that you need to understand, and many people don't know about it. Okay, so those are the only T4s. This is a team that does not require any T4s at all, except this one, which is very, very nice to have. Now, in terms of the ISO weight, the ISO weight on this team is extremely important because you want to make sure that you maximize how much you turn rewind the enemies. The characters that turn rewind on the basic are Shield Medic, Shield Operative, and also Shield Trooper. Now, this is very, very important, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. We are going to talk about other content creator. I'm not going to mention, but I'm going to show you. We have content creators that do ISO weight recommendation without taking a look at the speed of the characters. The speed of the characters is extremely important when you are making ISO weight recommendations. You don't want to have your fastest character as a striker because he has no vulnerabilities to attack. So this is a big mistake that a lot of people that do ISO weight recommendations make, is that they never pay attention to the speed of the characters. So for example, here we are with the striker ISO weight on operative, and that's not good because she's the fastest character. There is no vulnerabilities on the enemy, so you're not going to be able to take advantage of these. Then we also have this character with a skirmisher. We have this one with a raider. And on this specific team, I'm not sure if you're going to have enough vulnerabilities on the characters. It's likely because you have the higher crit chance, so the abilities from Shield Assault might apply enough vulnerabilities for you to benefit. But the only characters that you need to benefit is the characters with Fortified ISO weight, so it really depends. I like to have a little bit more skirmishers when we are using a raider, and especially for this specific situation where two of the strikers are the fastest characters. So not only Shield Operative is the fastest character, we also have Shield Medic as being the second fastest character. So having two strikers as the fastest characters is absolutely ridiculous. It's something that people as content creators need to pay attention to, because the speed matters, and if you have the wrong ISO weight on the character with the highest speed, it's not going to be as good for your team. So in terms of my recommendations, we are going to use Skirmisher on Shield Operative, and she also removes positive effects or something with her basic on top of turn rewinding the enemies. So let me guess, let me see, because I don't remember for sure. She has two effects that she does on her basic. So it's not only the on crit, turn rewind the enemies by 25%, and she also clears positive effects from the enemies. So once again, that skirmisher ISO weight is going to increase in value because she's the fastest character, and if the enemies with Fortifier, they have no buffs, it's not gonna matter. So we have double value of having this character as the skirmisher ISO weight. Then with the Shield Medic, you can use her as a healer if your characters are like very, very trashy gear, and if your characters are very low yellow stars, low red stars. In that specific situation, maybe the healer ISO weight is going to be somewhat beneficial for you, because there is not a lot of healing going on this team. The second best option is going to be the striker ISO weight, because that will allow you to double tap the enemies, and that will allow you to turn rewind the enemies twice. So that was the thing that I was mentioning. If you have operative with skirmisher ISO 8, it's not going to matter for her to have striker ISO 8, because the character coming next is going to turn rewind twice. It's going to turn rewind twice, so it's completely relevant. And yeah, that's why it's going to be important to have a striker ISO 8 on shield medic. Once again, just keep in mind that her healing is not the best. Okay, now in terms of the other characters, shield assault, she's definitely a raider because she has AoE attacks. She's going to attack multiple characters, so if you can apply some additional vulnerabilities to the team, that's going to be nice, because the next time you attack them, you are going to do 10% more damage. But this team is very single target damage, so it's just a little bit better, as she gets no benefits of having striker, and you definitely want your strikers to take advantage of the vulnerabilities. So you don't want to have unnecessary strikers, so therefore we are going with the Raider ISO 8. In terms of the shield security, you want to make sure that he applies the slow with his basic. You want to make sure that he applies the stun with the basic. Stun is also a useful ability on Scourges, because it will not activate the abilities of the Scourge effects themselves, so that's going to be important as well. You want to make sure that he lands the slows and applies the stuns. And in terms of the basic attack, that's it. He doesn't turn rewinds or anything like that. And you want to make sure that, once again, you have guaranteed vulnerabilities on the enemies. Even with a high crit chance, you want to have guaranteed vulnerabilities, and you want to have guaranteed negative effects, once again with the slow and with the stun. Finally, we have our second striker character. It's going to be Trooper, because he does the retaliation attacks. That's going to be more damage output with the striker ISO 8. Raider is also an option, as I said before, but if you have him as a striker, he's also going to do turn rewind the enemies by 25%, and that's why you need those guaranteed vulnerabilities on the enemies, and that's why you want to have the faster characters to go first and apply vulnerabilities, because otherwise you cannot benefit of them. So having this character with the striker ISO 8, you're going to be able to turn rewind, because remember that you are going to get that 90% crit chance thanks to the Scourges that give 30%, and also thanks to the passive of aim assault. Now, in terms of gear, this team is problematic, because it uses a lot of shield tech, and there are some important characters right now that use shield tech. We have at least one of them on the Bionic Avengers, which is a must-have raid team, and we also have shield tech on the Secret Avengers, which is also a must-have team. And that's going to be a problem for you. We have actually two characters on the Secret Avengers that use the centerpiece unique. So if you are a new player, if you are a mid-range player, this is going to be a team that is problematic for you to invest in, because in the long run you are going to require this shield tech gear to apply to other characters, making the aim team more convenient for you. Then we also have this Palladium, that we have multiple characters now that require Palladium. If you are searching for Apocalypse, you need Palladium for Brawn, and we also have a Palladium for Magneto, which is a must-have character for the raid team. So as you can see, this team is nice. It's probably the best team. It's probably the team that will benefit out having the most Scourges, but at the same time, you're going to have some problem as a gear. This is why I don't recommend this team for new players, mid-range players. Veteran players will somewhat benefit of this team. And in terms of rumors of reworks, there is a big rumor that Mockingbird is going to come to the game somewhere between March and May, and she's going to be a skill character, and she is going to improve skill minions and also characters that are part of the Secret Avengers. But this is all rumors, this is all things that we have been hearing about this. In terms of gear, there is no, you don't need to spend silver promotion credits or gold promotion credits on this team, because it's 100% unnecessary. Now, I forgot to mention, in terms of investment for new players, you can unlock Iron Man with these characters, but there are so many other better shield characters that, while for Nick Fury you need Kree, for this one you have many other options, and it's not one way of justifying investing on this team. This is only for the top of the top of the top. This is for the 1% of the 1% of the players that are gonna try to get to top 50, because even top 500 you could also use this team, but I think you are gonna have a better time with the AIM team if that's your goal, to get that top 500 or top 2500. This is only for, once again, if you have these characters maxed out level 90, gear T15 or higher, and also if you are going to like top 50, like it's the 1% of the 1%, it doesn't make sense for most people. And in terms of position, I like to use this guy in the corner, even that it doesn't really matter. This guy does the retaliation attacks. It's not counters, so it does not stop chain attacks. The position of this team, again, it doesn't really matter. You can put the tank anywhere. You want to make sure that if you have this guy taunting, that you have this guy next to him, just to make sure that he always does the retaliation attacks. And that's pretty much it. So that's the shield team for you, and that's the video, guys. That's all the minions that we have in Marvel Strike Force. Why should you invest on each of these characters? Depending on where you are at the game. Once again, Kree is going to be better for new players because it will allow you to unlock Nick Fury and Omega Red. Then the Ravagers is going to be better for you in case you invest them in the past, otherwise I would not recommend them. Then we have Hydra that have some viability for PvP, for Avengers Tower, Cosmic Crucible and so on. There are a few combos that you can make with them. And the AIM team is going to be the team that will be the easiest to play with on the Scourges, that will allow you to get some higher scores with them. And finally we have the shield team that will be for the most sweaty of the sweaty, the 1% of the 1%, and that's pretty much it. Once again, in terms of reworks, the teams that are more likely to get reworks is going to be the AIM team, the shield team, and also the Hydra team. The other ones, I don't think, based on the rumors that we have heard about it and what we have in this past year. So that's going to be the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed all the information that you need to know about the minions, what to invest and so on. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, as always, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you are new to my channel, make sure you subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content. We'll be here on Friday to test the AIM team on the Death Scourge and see how far I can get with them at level 75, gear tier 14. And that's all I have for you guys. If you are new to my channel, make sure you subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content. You can also follow me on Twitch. I live stream on both platforms at the same time, so it doesn't really matter if you decide to watch it on YouTube or on Twitch. And that's it. Take care, and I will see you guys later on the Death Scourge.